All right, let's start with a real head scratcher. What if the very core of your intelligence, the thing that makes you you, is both set in stone from the day you're born and something that's constantly changing throughout your life? I know, it sounds like a total contradiction, right? Well, today we are jumping right into this fascinating puzzle, the paradox of intelligence. It's that classic nature versus nurture debate, but trust me, the real answer is so much cooler than just picking a side. So, this is the big question, isn't it? The one that scientists and philosophers have been arguing about for ages. Are we born with a certain amount of smarts and that's just our lot in life? Or is our mind more like, well, like clay that gets shaped by everything we learn, every experience we have, and the world we grow up in? It's the ultimate debate, but you'll see that the modern science points to an answer that's way more interesting than a simple either or. And here is that paradox in black and white. On one hand, science is crystal clear, intelligence is one of the single most heritable traits we have. Some studies estimate that as much as 80% of the differences in IQ scores between people can be chalked up to genetics. But, and this is a huge but, we also have something called the Flynn effect. For the last 100 years, average IQ scores have been going up and up and up all across the globe. Our genes just don't change that fast. So what gives? How can both of these things possibly be true at the same time? Let's dig in and unpack this. To really get to the bottom of this, we've got to start with the genetic side of the argument. And that means we need to get super clear on a word that gets thrown around a lot and is almost always misunderstood: heritability. Okay, so we have to get this one thing straight right away, because the word heritability trips a lot of people up. When scientists say intelligence is, let's say, 80% heritable, it absolutely does not mean that 80% of your personal intelligence comes from your DNA. That's a huge misconception. Here's a better way to think about it. Imagine a whole forest of trees. Heritability helps us understand why some trees in that forest are taller than others, by looking at the differences in their genetic seeds. But it tells you nothing about one single tree, like how much of its height came from its seed versus the soil, the water, and all the sunshine it got. See the difference? It's a statistic about what causes variation within a group, not a destiny written for an individual. So even with that important clarification, a heritability of 50 to 80% is, well, it's massive. That makes intelligence one of the most heritable behavioral traits we've ever studied. This number isn't just pulled out of thin air. It comes from decades of really careful research, especially those famous twin studies, comparing identical twins who share 100% of their DNA to fraternal twins who share about 50%. And the results are just incredibly consistent. Our genes play a huge role. But how? How do genes influence something as incredibly complex as how we think? Well, let's just get this out of the way. There is no single genius gene. It just doesn't exist. Instead, intelligence is what's known as a highly polygenic trait. I love this analogy for it. Think of a massive symphony orchestra. That incredible, complex, beautiful music you're hearing, it's not coming from one superstar violinist. It's the sound of thousands of different instruments all playing together, each one contributing a tiny, almost unnoticeable part to the whole masterpiece. Our intelligence is built in the exact same way, from the tiny combined effects of thousands and thousands of genes. So how in the world do scientists find all those thousands of tiny genetic instruments? They use this amazing technique called a genome-wide association study, or GWAS for short. Basically, they scan the entire genetic code of hundreds of thousands of people. Then they hunt for these tiny little variations. You can think of them as single-letter typos in our DNA, called SNPs. By comparing the DNA of all these people to their scores on cognitive tests, they can see which of those little typos show up just a little more often in people with higher scores. And believe it or not, the latest research has already found over 1,000 genes that are part of this incredible symphony. Now, this is where things get really, really wild. So we've found all these genetic markers, right? But look at where they are. The overwhelming majority, we're talking over 80% combined, are not in the protein-coding parts of the genes themselves. They're found in what scientists for a long time kind of dismissively called junk DNA. Well, turns out it's not junk at all. It's more like the conductor of the entire genetic orchestra. These regions are filled with switches and dials that tell the other genes when to turn on, when to turn off, and how loud to play. So the genetic basis for intelligence isn't just about having the right instruments. It's about having a masterful conductor who knows exactly how to play them. Okay, but remember, our genes are only half of the story. The other half, the power of our environment, is just as stunning, and the evidence for it is completely undeniable. And this right here is the smoking gun, the Flynn effect. Just look at this. For the last 100 years, in country after country, average IQ scores have been steadily climbing. We're talking about a massive, sustained increase. A person with a totally average IQ score today would have been considered pretty darn smart just a few generations back. Now, our collective gene pool can't possibly have changed that much in such a short time. This has to be the world we live in. It's the combination of things like better nutrition, way more schooling, and just living in a more complex, cognitively demanding world. And when you talk about the environment, education is an absolute giant. A huge study, a meta-analysis that looked at data from over 600,000 people, found that for every extra year of school someone completes, their IQ gets a boost of between 1 and 5 points. And this isn't just some temporary thing for passing a test. It's a real, lasting effect. It seems that education literally helps build a stronger, more efficient, more flexible brain. And of course, it's not just about what happens in the classroom. The environment shapes us from the moment we're born. Something as simple as good nutrition is absolutely critical. A childhood iodine deficiency, for example, can knock 10 to 15 points off an IQ score. The home you grow up in, whether it's filled with books and conversation and feels safe, that provides the whole foundation for cognitive growth. And then you have things like better healthcare, which is drastically reduce diseases that can harm the brain, and even the constant mental workout we get from modern technology. It all adds up. Okay, so we've got this powerful genetic blueprint on one side, and this undeniable environmental influence on the other. So how do we solve the paradox? Well, the modern answer is that we've been asking the wrong question. It was never nature versus nurture. It's nature via nurture. The two are locked together in this beautiful, complicated dance that lasts our entire lives. Now, get ready for a finding that seems totally backwards at first. As we get older, you'd think our life experiences would matter more and our genes would matter less, right? Nope, it's the opposite. The heritability of intelligence actually gets stronger as we age. This is called the Wilson effect. Look at the numbers. In early childhood, heritability is pretty low, around 20%. But by the time we're adults, it shoots up to that massive 60 to 80% we talked about. How on earth can that be? The answer is something called active gene-environment correlation, and it's a total game changer for understanding this. The idea is this: our genes don't just sit back and build our brains. They actively push us to make certain choices, to seek out specific environments. Think about it. A kid who has a genetic predisposition for curiosity isn't just going to sit quietly. They're the one who's always digging for bugs, asking a million questions, and pulling books off the shelf. An adult who's naturally drawn to abstract problems might find themselves in a career like engineering or philosophy. Our genes are constantly nudging us to build our own little worlds that happen to be the perfect place for those genes to really thrive. I think this quote just nails it. We aren't just passive sponges soaking up whatever the world throws at us. We are exploring organisms. We actively choose, filter, and even create our own environments based on our built-in tendencies. And as we get older and have more freedom to choose our friends, our hobbies, and our careers, we get better and better at matching our environment to our genetic blueprint. That is why heritability goes up as we age. We're literally building the world that lets our genes express themselves most fully. So after going through the genes, the environment, and this intricate dance they do, what's the big takeaway here? What does this all mean for us in the real world? Well, the first and most important point is this: intelligence is not destiny. Your genes might set up a certain potential, but they do not write your future in permanent ink. Second, the environment is everything. It's the soil that allows that genetic potential to either grow and flourish or wither. And third, we are the active architects of our own minds. We are constantly shaping the very environments that shape us. And there's one more crucial point that the source material makes clear. While genes clearly matter for individuals, trying to use genetics to explain average IQ differences between groups is just not supported by the science. It completely ignores the enormous impact of things like poverty, discrimination, and unequal access to education. And all of this leaves us with a really deep question to think about. Our ability to read our own genetic blueprint is getting more powerful by the day. We're starting to understand the biological roots of human potential in a way that was science fiction just a generation ago. The real challenge ahead of us isn't going to be about the science. It's going to be about our wisdom. How are we going to use this incredible knowledge? Are we going to use it to design better schools, create healthier environments, and provide richer opportunities that allow every single person's unique genetic symphony to play out as beautifully as possible? That's the question this amazing science leaves for us to answer.